Welcome, everybody, to School Facilities and Operations. I'm Burke Jones, and I guess you could say I host this podcast. Basically, I have come on here and have good conversations with people. So I have a couple different types of shows where I talk with other guys that are in operations in school districts, or I have on trade partners where you kind of dive into let them teach us on what we should know about roofing, paving, flooring, all of those kind of things. Today have kind of a little bit different episode. We're going to dive into some touchy feely stuff. So first, I just want to welcome Joshua Peach to the show. Welcome. Thanks for joining me, man.
Thanks for having me. This is an honor to be on the someday #1 school facility management operations podcast. And that's coming from a guy that's got 2 of his own podcasts that do that, but
I got some catching up to do.
Yeah, you're on the road to #1.
Yeah. Well, Josh has been a good mentor to me when I was launching my podcast. We connected and, really we've just turned into friends. So it's been a great ride and we've had a lot of fun. And we've only met each other once, and next week we'll see each other again. So
second in person. Yeah.
That's right. So tell us a little bit about what you going on, pitch your podcast, whatever you want to talk about.
I got a little bit going on. So first and foremost, I'm vice president of business development for a company called Operations Hero. A couple of friends of mine and I that have been in the business for CMMS software for 27 plus years together, in different companies. Scott and Pat, the founders, started this up, and I joined the team a year ago and been working with schools directly with their software needs. And then I have my company that I started 5 years ago for public speaking and doing things like customer service and talking about some of the stuff that, authenticity and vulnerability is one of the kind of pieces that I talk about. And we can talk about how some of that happens naturally, organically in conversation. So Be Awesome, and it's BEAUSM, spelt different, but the same meaning, it's 3 periodic elements. And then I've got 3 podcasts. I've got Be Awesome, which is having awesome people just come on and tell their stories. And it's everywhere from, I'm in Vail, Colorado. So in the video, I got skis and snowshoes in the background. I'm actually in my hotel room. So a friend of mine, Ron McCulley, who's on his, I think, almost 15th year of cancer survivor, when they didn't give him more than a couple of years, to me attempting to climb a 14er in Colorado. So I got a couple of Colorado episodes, but I've got all different 110 different podcast episodes, including the vulnerability part. Probably part of the vulnerability piece was my colonoscopy episode, where I talk about my first colonoscopy. So it's just a general feel-good podcast. And then I'd Be Awesome at Facility Management, which focuses on the facility management specifically with schools and local government. And then lastly, across the river, on the other side in Missouri, I have the Show Me Mo School Facilities podcast, which is hosted by the Missouri School Plant Managers Association, and I'm their speaker host, and I've been doing that for the last year, and it's been a lot of fun. So a lot of my work revolves around education, specifically in the operations world, and just have a lot of fun every day. I get to have a little bit of fun. And
I know
since Thursday, I've been to St. Joe's, North Kansas City, Branson, Missouri, Chicago, Denver, and now Vail. And then I'm going home for 12 hours so I can do laundry and see my family and make sure that the locks aren't changed, and then come down and see you guys in Kansas, which is exciting because this is my first trip over to Topeka. So
fantastic
good stuff all around.
Well, I got to say, your Be Awesome podcast. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and a lot of the guests on other podcasts are like super famous people.
Yeah.
And they're telling their stories, but on your podcast, it's like pretty normal people that have done some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
And that's why I really enjoy listening to it, because it's not people you read about in the news. I mean, there's been some of those, but it's people that have decided to do some cool things and do some really make their lives worthwhile.
So I like to call it ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and and everybody does extraordinary things, right? Life is we forget how valuable and how incredible and how unique our life is. There's only one of us. So you can try and talk about this duplication and cloning and everything. but our DNA, our total DNA, there's only one of us. And that's pretty extraordinary in itself. And then you couple that with, different things that happen in your life and how they all work. And it's like, wow, this is a really cool story. And I hear so many amazing stories. And I mean, I've become friends with or acquaintances, or I don't know what you want to call it, with a 3-time Super Bowl champion. And I've been asking him to come on the podcast, and he's like, well, I got to wait until this happens. I got to wait till this happens. And I said, I don't want to talk about football. I want to ask you, I want you to tell me the 3 to 5 questions that you've gone through your life that you've wanted a reporter to ask you that they never did. I want you to tell me that you want someone to ask you the question of, why did you choose football over baseball when you were 7 years old? Or what's your best memory of growing up that you try to hold on to every day? And so that's the stuff that the meat and potatoes is from. And so even when you have someone that's famous, and I'm actually I'm going to see a friend of mine who is somewhat famous, Aaron Ralston, the Real Life 127 Hours.
Oh yeah.
He had to remove his own arm after being in Blue John Canyon, and so he's out here in Colorado. I'm gonna see him in a couple of hours, and we've done 2 or 3 episodes together, and we didn't talk about that. We didn't talk about the book or the movie. We just talked about life and climbing a mountain and making your boulders of blessings and just kind of other stuff. So that's what the stuff that I think people want to hear and need to hear, and that everybody's human, so.
Yeah, I know. That's exactly right. Okay, well, I'm going to put on my Kumbaya music, get out my rain stick.
Yeah.
Let's dive into this. So I think I'll just start with, what brought us to this idea of this show and talking about being vulnerable and authentic.
Yeah.
And, I'm not going to go into all the details, but I was going through something like really rough. And there was like a few weeks where, I showed up to work and I worked, but it was a lot just to do that. And in the meantime, I got Peach calling me, over a few weeks, just wanted to check in. And I just kept, deny, or send it to voicemail or whatever. And because I kind of knew, like, if I got on the phone with Josh, like, he'll probably like read right through me, And so finally I see it's him, and I wasn't busy. I picked up the phone and he's like, what's going on? And I said, dude, I just kind of, was really honest about what was going on.
Yeah.
And, you were humble and gracious and, authentic with some things in your life. And, I think that's really hard for people to do on both sides of that. But I came away feeling like, okay, I've kind of got this off my chest a little bit to a guy I don't have to see every day, but also just like with some hope and like, what, he like feels for me. He cares about me. And so I think maybe on that phone call, we started talking about like, this is the important stuff. Like,
yeah.
And as leaders, I think it's more important than ever for us to be doing that. I think that's what every generation wants to see from their leaders, but I especially think with the younger people that are coming into the workforce, that's what they absolutely expect from us, is to be authentic and to be real, and be vulnerable. And so that's kind of what launched this whole thing. So I don't know, I guess, what was it like when we talked?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll take a step back because, at the beginning of all of this, well, there's a couple of different aspects, right? We became friends. I tell people, if you give me your phone number, I'm like a bad cold. You can't get rid of me. And so you're in my phone book. And so, I've got a memory that stays with me since 2009, and I'm a salesperson, and I was trying to sell you software until we realized that wasn't a fit, and we're still going to be friends, right? But
right.
I'm still a salesman at the end of the day, and that's hard when you develop relationships and you have products or services that you can sell. And in 2009, I was a young sales rep, and I was aggressive, and I had been trying to get into this school for a long time, and I finally got through. And the business manager was like, "Yes, we absolutely need to talk. We want you to come in and da 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 da. And this was on a Friday. And so I called on Monday, and he didn't answer. I called on Wednesday, left a message, didn't answer. And I called a number of times. And finally, after a couple of months, he finally answered the phone. And instead of asking if he was okay, and instead of seeing, if whatever, I took the selfish stance, and I was like, hey, glad you finally answered the phone. I've been trying to reach you. We were going to have a meeting 2.5 months ago. And he just said, yeah, I'm terribly sorry. My wife passed away 2 days after we talked, and I've been on leave.
Oh,
And his wife that he was married to for like 40 years.
yeah.
And we never had a conversation where he didn't talk about his wife. And so I knew how much that hurt. And so from that point on in my life, I was like, you know what? Even if whenever I call someone, whatever it is, whether it's business or personal related, I can't take offense to the fact that they're either not answering the phone or calling me back. Cause I used to be like, what's their problem? And once it gets to like 2 or 3 times, and that's what happened. I think it was probably my 3rd or 4th call. I'm like, Burke, all I need is a text from you that says you're okay. That's all I care about. I don't care about anything else. Just tell me you're okay. And then we can figure out the rest of it from there. And that's typically an icebreaker, because most people don't ask that simple thing. And you did. You texted me back and you said, I'm okay. I've had a tough couple of weeks. Can we talk tomorrow? And so, it wasn't one of those things where I can see through you or I can tell what's going on through the phone or anything. It's kind of that building comfort. And as leaders, that's what we have to do with everyone, with people that we provide service to our clients, i.e. our employees. If you're a leader, your customer is your employee, first and foremost. And then you have your customers that actually pay for your employees to be your customer. But being a male and a male leader, there's this perception that we're invincible and that nothing, we can handle anything and take on the world. And, that's probably why the suicide rate is higher with men than it is with women. That's probably why we have a higher risk of heart attack. I'm not looking at the studies, but one can only assume that the stress that one puts on for holding stuff in or avoiding conversation or potential conflict, that does a number on your body, right? It turns you inside out and upside down. So, it's just important for me to make sure you're okay. And you don't need to tell me anything, right? You don't need to tell me what's on your mind. I just need to know if you're okay or not. And if you say you're not okay, I say, do you want to talk to me or you want to talk to a therapist? Doesn't much matter. Either way, just talk to somebody.
Yeah.
And that's my PSA. And I'm probably overdue to get back in, but I started with a regular therapist, 17 plus years ago. And, if you're not comfortable doing what Burke did, and then what I did, which was Burke shared a little, I shared a little, he shared a little, I shared a little. And all of a sudden, first of all, for me anyway, that one conversation, I think we went from, 1 year acquaintance to friend to, we jumped about 3 levels. And it's like, I got something going on in my life. Burke's on top of my list. Like I'm calling him because I know we've shared,
Right.
We've shared some of what's deep to us. Might not be deep to other people, but things that are deep to us that we realize that, hey, I can trust this person, because that's number one, right? Establishing trust. And 2, I felt comfortable enough with that trust to share something that I don't share with the world. So the next time I hit this speed bump, instead of being in the zone of just showing up for 3 weeks or 4 weeks and just going through the motions, you get out of it faster by, sharing with people. And, I'll tell you, I'll share this other story real quick with you, if you don't mind. And I'm not used to being a guest. I told you that. So you're going to have to shut me up, stop me, and pull the hook or whatever. But it's really interesting with how I unintentionally get people to be vulnerable. And I'm not saying like I put some sort of trance on people, but I had this really interesting experience on my flight on Thursday to Chicago. I met this young man sitting next to me, and because I have Be Awesome logos everywhere, that typically build some sort of conversation. And so this gentleman was sitting next to me. He's like, hey, you really got Be Awesome all over the place. I'm like, it's the only way to be, man. And so he asked me what I did, and I started to tell him about what I did and who I was, like you did in the beginning there. And I tried to keep it short and sweet. But what I realized really quickly is I feel like it's kind of like when people ask you, what do you do for a living? They don't really care what you do for a living. They want you to come back and say, what do you do for a living?
Right.
Right. And so, I mean, I felt this need to ask a question because he told me that he was an Army brat and lived in 16 different places. And this was the simple question was, where was your favorite place to live? And he said, Washington, D.C. until 9/11. Now, anyone can assume and just leave it at that. But I had to scratch more, right? And that's what getting vulnerability says. All right, I get it. 9/11 is hands down one of the worst days in American history. And in New York, Washington, D.C., and Pennsylvania, doubly hard because they were the ones that were directly impacted by actions taken by terrorists. But what made that day, the day that you thought that was the best place to live other than that day? And he said, well, my dad was in the Pentagon. And fortunately, his dad survived, but he went 11 hours without hearing from no family member heard from his dad for 11 hours. And a lot of his dad's friends were killed that day.
Yeah.
And so, but he got comfortable so quickly just by asking questions that I didn't know the answers to. And I always tell people, and I said to you, when we talked, I think I said this to you, because I typically do. Hey, if I'm going to ask you a lot of questions, I'm not an HR expert. If I ask you something as a friend or as a person, you don't want to answer, just say, Pete, shut up. Right.
Right.
And nobody really ever doesn't answer the questions. Right.
Right.
But that authenticity, because that's part of this, that authenticity of wanting to hear about people is what really gets that opening and that comfort level and that trust and that relationship and all the aspects of what you're saying. Everybody wants that.
Yeah.
Right. And most people don't know how to give it or receive it.
I think it's a fear thing. I think a lot of us are like, I'm not going to know what to say. They're going to say something and I'm not going to know what to say.
Mm-hmm.
When really you just have, if you just show up and listen, that's 90% of it.
Oh yeah.
I think back, when our first son was born 11 weeks early. Mm-hmm. So just for example, he was due October 10th. He was born July 27th.
Yeah.
Okay. 1 pound, 12 ounces. My wife was in the hospital for just a couple of days before he was born. And I called, my kind of leader where I was working, kind of a manager, kind of an unofficial leader of the office. And I said, hey, I'm not going to be in tomorrow. We're at the hospital and it looks like Susan's going to have the baby. And, we're scared to death,
Yeah.
And he's like, where are you at? And I told him what hospital we were at. Like, this is like 10:30 at night. He comes walking into our hospital room. And, I'm sure he didn't know what to say. I'm sure he felt awkward. But he just showed up,
Mm-hmm.
and said, I don't remember what we talked about. I remember that, he was a real man of faith. I have a strong faith. And I remember, he's like, I'll just pray with you guys. And he just kneeled down next to the bed and we prayed and it forever changed the level of relationship we had.
Yeah.
Because he showed up. And I know, like, I'd be like, well, I'm their supervisor. Why would they want me there?
Yeah.
Or we have to ask
about this.
Yeah, I posted about this on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And I think that we got to get over ourselves a little bit, like, and show up for people,
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. Your post just sparked a thought in my brain because I remember reading it and I was trying to find the book because it's not in version 1. But it struck a chord with me because it's part of the How to Be a Gentleman book. So there's actually books. Men's Warehouse used to sell it. So when I got my first suit when I was 22 or 23, they had a book right next to the cash register that said How to Be a Gentleman. And it has everything from etiquette with eating to holding the door, like simple, stupid stuff.
Right.
Like common sense, but it's not common sense if you're not a practitioner of it and if nobody shows you. So I got the books when I was a young adult to make sure that I was doing kind of the thoughtful things and the thankful things. And one of the things that it talks about is when someone experiences trauma or loss to not ask. This is the worst thing that someone can do. And I knew this without the book. The worst thing that anybody can do when someone is dealing with trauma or loss is ask, if there's anything, this is the line. If there's anything I can do, let me know.
Yep.
First of all, they're not going to let you know.
They're not going to let you know.
They're never going to let you know. They're not going to be like, hey, can you get me a platter of sandwiches? Can you get me, some snacks?
Can you mow my yard?
So that example is exactly the example that I was going to give. And it's not like because I did it, but I've got a friend of mine that I grew up with, one of my best friends. He's a year younger than I am. He's got a brother that's a year older than I am, that we weren't very close. And then they have another brother that was a couple of years older than all of us, and an older sister. And the oldest brother was killed in a car accident on my first day of community college, 1994, 95, 94. And I was young, 19 years old, 18, 19 years old. And I get the call that he was killed in a car accident. And I went over to the house. They had this beautiful house, a big yard. And there was lots of people, right? There were all these people mourning and doing all this stuff. And when I pulled in, the grass was high. And the older brother, the middle brother, was away at college. And like I said, we didn't get along. We were not, we were highly competitive with each other. I was a smart aleck, and he got a ride home from college, and there's 50 people all doing the right thing, that they could do. And I'm out there mowing the lawn. And then I went, I think I got ice cream for people or something. I just wanted to do something. And part of it was my inability probably to cope with loss, because I had experienced little to no loss.
Right.
So I just wanted it was one, I wanted to do things to help them. And two, it was probably a coping mechanism for me to just stay busy, because then I wouldn't have to put a lot of thought into it. And I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think that it was like, I didn't even know that anybody knew that I mowed the lawn. And it was a number of years later, and the middle brother, who we didn't get along, we started to spend time with each other and hang out and go skiing and do things. And one night we were just hanging out, having a drink. And he said, you want to know something? He said, I had this thought of you, and, it stuck with me for a long time. And then when my brother died and everybody was inside, you were outside sweating, mowing our lawn. He said it was a long time after, after the services and everything. He went to his mom. He's like, why did you tell Josh to mow the lawn? She's like, nobody told him to mow the lawn. He just did it. And that was like one of the greatest memories that he had. And I was like, wow, I didn't think anything of it. And so, the important thing for people to do is to do what you believe is right. So
Right.
if you believe the right thing to do is nothing, do nothing. If you know the person, it's most likely not do nothing.
Right.
But if a family is dealing with something traumatic or a loss, don't wait for them to ask for something. Just do it. And your boss knew that, and your boss had an innate ability, and that was a comfort, I'm sure.
Right.
That gave you the ability to know that you didn't need to worry about your job, because that's the last thing you need to worry about.
Right.
I'd rather have someone for 30 years and lose 11 weeks of productivity out of them than have them worry about them losing their job, compromise their home life, and then have a disgruntled employee. Like, I bet that boss today, if they called you and said, Burke, I want you to come work for me. Here's what I want to do. You probably have loyalty that maybe you might not go work for him, but you at least listen to him.
Yeah.
And that's something that not a lot of people do. They don't. They think that the GoFundMe's and the all this other stuff is like, it's good enough. And we're humans. We need support. We need understanding. And maybe you knew you were religious. I don't know that aspect of it, but I'm sure a lot of times people will want to pray and do things with people that are into praying, and people
Right.
that know you well enough. Maybe it's just talking.
Yeah.
But, definitely
I
don't
think-
steer away from it is the key takeaway.
Yeah, that's what I think. And I think what you get back when you're vulnerable or authentic is you realize that you're not an island.
Mhm.
Like, so, I mean, kind of turn this towards my faith a little bit. So there's like a group of 20 guys at church that we meet every Friday morning. watch a video for 20 minutes, talk for 30 minutes and small, tables of 8 or whatever. And, I remember starting that and looking around like, these are like some super holy people. Like I see them all the time at church, you compare yourself, right? And now that we've been doing it for a few years, you realize everybody has problems with their kids. Everybody has money issues. Everybody has issues with their wife or trying to be a good husband or has work issues. And I think when you're vulnerable with people, they'll be that way with you. And you realize like, I'm not weird or crazy or a mess just because I have issues in my life. Like that's everybody.
Yeah.
And so I think you get as much out of it as you put in it. And I think that's just an interesting concept. I think not to turn it men and women, but I think when the women I see, they have friends that they talk about stuff with. And I think as guys, we don't. Like we watch the game, we talk about sports, blah, 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 but we don't really talk about what's going on at home or what's going on with our kids and what's going on at work. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and again, not stereotyping, but women have it figured out way better than we do. They just do. I mean,
that's right.
We are just and I think part of it is, part of it is that the fear, we've become such a strange society around, social media and what people share on it and how they share it. And then also, the gossip trains, right? So there's so much, what you and I have from a relationship standpoint, for meeting in person only once, but having dialogue on the phone and LinkedIn posts and things, I think that's fairly unique. And I think that that's one thing that you have to search out people that you're comfortable sharing with, that they're not, because there's people that want you to be vulnerable and share stuff so they can feel better about themselves.
Right.
That's just the way that the world works. And what you want to seek out are people that want you to be vulnerable and share stuff so that you can feel better about yourself, that they can help and make you feel better. And you even said that on that call with you and I think I was picking up pizza for the family, and I was in the car driving, and you were like, man, I feel so much better. I wish people could just talk more like this and be open. And so, but you knew it was a vault. You knew it was like, hey, it's not going any further past this. And we all deal with stuff, right?
Right.
I'll tell you, I got vulnerable with 1,500 people, and I don't share my every detail and every last piece, but I share a couple of things and I only pick on the colonoscopy because it's the only thing that's public for the world to hear. But when I share stuff about the stigmas and the fears and the stuff that goes on with that to 1,500 people, the result was tons of conversations with people that never knew me before that day. And then I have over 200 emails that I've received out of 1,500 attendees sharing personal life stories, sharing things that they're pained from, sharing feelings that they felt relieved that they weren't alone. And it's like, wow, and how cool is that, right? And people ask me all the time, they're like, how does that make you feel? And I'm like, it's the greatest feeling in the world, but it is so draining because you hear all of these stories that are just, you go, wow, like I can't tell you how many times I hugged someone between last Thursday and today of people that just shared with me stories that they've been holding in or that they weren't comfortable sharing. And you could just see them hurting. And at the same time, you had tears of relief. They weren't tears of sadness. They're tears of relief of like, hey, I got this out. I feel much better. But yeah, one of the things you have to do is, and I always talk about you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, which is not my coin phrase. It's from Jim Rohn. Choosing the right 5 to get vulnerable with, and you have that with your church group and you have that with others, but you want to make sure people pass the sniff test, because I think one of the reasons why men have a hard time in the stereotype of this with being vulnerable and having true authenticity is trust.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that's
Yeah. And that's what we like at our Friday morning group. We say this is like Vegas in here.
Yeah.
Because everybody knows each other. Everybody knows each other's wives. Everybody knows everything. Right.
Yeah.
And then what came out of that was even interesting is that me and two other guys decided we didn't know each other super well, but we decided, hey, once a month, we're going to have breakfast together and we're basically going to focus on each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so we kind of go around the table and, what are you struggling with? What are you thankful for?
Yep.
What do you need us to pray for you for? And we know at that table, that's the end of it, right?
Yeah.
Like it's no one's going home to tell their wife. No one's going to tell anybody else. But, that's a deeper level of relationship than what we get with 20 guys, right, on Friday morning.
Mm-hmm.
So, and
that's a trust given environment.
It is. And I think, I don't know, just at my age, I think I just really needed to seek out some other people like that I could, go that deeper level with. And so it worked for me. I just encourage you to do whatever works for you, whether that's church, whether it's your buddies from college or, guys you meet on, at conferences, however you can form those relationships. I think it's just super important for us just to help balance our lives.
Yeah. Well, it's also, one of the things I'll say about it is, part of the vulnerability is, so there's two aspects in the trust world, which is earned trust or given trust. And so you either, if you were, hey, why don't you trust me? You got to earn your trust first. It's like, you have to prove yourself before I will give you that coveted word of trust. Or you choose to do the given trust, which is you're going to give someone trust until they give you a reason not to trust it. And that in itself has its own unique vulnerability, right? Earned trust is going to be a much smaller pool of people because you're going to have most people going to be like, this is BS. I'm high integrity. I've done my dues. I've done everything I'm supposed to do. I'm a good human being. And now I have to, and how do I earn their trust? Like, what do I have to do things for them to see me do it to earn their trust? Like, what is that actually? And step back. I was an earned trust person for a very long time. I did not trust you until I felt you deserved it.
Right.
And I never had a measurement for it.
Right.
I changed over to a given trust a number of years ago with some team members that I had that I realized that I wasn't giving them trust. And I would just say, hey, look, when it came to work, I said, look, I'll never ask you to do something I'm not willing to do myself. And if I have to do your job enough, I don't need you. So I'm giving you the trust to do your job. And I'm going to give you the trust that if you can't, you're going to tell me. And then it was all these pieces. And then what I found was, and in that whole, your son being premature by 11 weeks now, that whenever I had a team member that was going to be a parent, I always told him, I said, I don't want you to work when you can't work during the birth and the follow-up and everything else. I just want you to tell me, like, if you need to take 6 months off,
right,
just tell me. Don't pretend to work. Like, I'd rather you not work for 6 months and I know about it and I help you with your work than for you to pretend that you're working and limp through it. And then 6 months later I go, you didn't do your job and I got to let go of you. And that happened 3 or 4 times. And what was amazing was, because I gave that trust, like most companies have like 6 and 12 week maternity leaves and everything. These people were back to work in like 2 and 3 weeks. And it was encouraged by their significant other. It was like, hey, I'm good. You don't need to take any additional time. Go back to work. And so given trust is hard. I can only think of given trust in probably the last 5 years since I started Be Awesome. I think I've been hurt by given trust less than 2 times.
Yeah.
And I've had thousands of interactions.
Right.
Now, that's not to say that there isn't some, secret society of people that are, telling tall tales about me and the things that I share, but I'm basically an open book. But yeah, less. So you know what? If I have thousands of interactions and I have less than 2 people that have really kind of challenged their trust, then that's a couple thousand more people in my life that are awesome, right?
Yeah.
That I can go to, that I can trust, that I can believe in, and for different reasons and purposes, right? So, that's really one of the strong pieces to, that authentic, and vulnerable piece that you're doing. And you're right on. It doesn't need to be church. It doesn't need to be a therapist. It doesn't need to be a pickleball league, which is, from what I understand, the most popular sporting event and fun time that people are having. I don't get it, but maybe I'll play sometime. But it just needs to be something, and
Yeah.
find it. And it could be um, could be joining a walking club with the Y,
Right.
where, because I know our local Y has a group of people that walk every week, that they collect their pocket change and they donate it to the Y, and then they go on this 4-mile walking tour. Or maybe you just go for a walk with people that you never met before, and you start bending their ear and seeing what they feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
So
And those shared experiences, I think, are a big part of it too.
yeah.
You're all doing this, you're all walking together,
Mhm.
sharing that experience. It kind of breaks down that initial wall.
Yeah.
Um,
Commonality, right?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a little bit about employees, but one of the most impactful books on leadership that I've ever read, and honestly, I keep referring back to it, is The 5 Levels of Leadership by John Maxwell.
Yep.
If you haven't read it, you need to buy it. You need to read it, because it's basically a manual on leadership. It's not pie in the sky, feel good stuff. It's like, here's what you need to do. And, the first level is people follow you because of your title. So I'm the director of operations. You have to follow me.
Yep.
I'm your boss, basically. But the next level is they follow you because of the relationship they have with you. And, I think there's a work aspect to that relationship that, they see that you're going to support them and, fight for them or whatever. But I think that it's the personal relationship that gets you to level 2.
Mhm.
And it's knowing about people's kids. It's knowing about their wives. It's knowing about what they're doing. It's getting I don't know if friendship's the right word, but it is almost like that. It's getting to know people beyond work.
Yeah.
And that can't be a one-sided equation. Like, as the leader, you can't just have them tell you everything about them and you never share anything.
Mhm.
So it's definitely a back and forth.
Yeah.
And it takes time, right? Like, there's some people that you connect with and it's easy, and there's other people that it's harder.
Yeah. Well, and when you use the word friendship in a professional setting, it's got a couple of different things to it. And I always tell people, I want to have a relationship with everyone on my team. I'm very fortunate. Scott Patton and Paul Fletcher and Ryan Schwartz on my Operations Hero team. We've got anywhere between 10 and 27 years of history. So
Right.
we're literally like family. Like all these people saying, well, your culture is family and da da da. Yeah, we are like family, and I'm very fortunate in that aspect. But I've been in a lot of situations where I haven't had people with that history, that ability to just call each other out and know that we're looking out for one another's best intentions. But I still want to have a relationship. Doesn't mean we're going to go out for drinks on Friday. And as a
Right.
leader, you have to be careful about that stuff. So
Right.
it is a real balance on how do we establish that relationship without going too far past where it's too personal, right? And so
Right.
that's that effective leadership, and that's a great book. And I will tell you, if you can't read it, they have an Audible version of it, so
Yeah.
listen to it 3 times. And another book that ties in with the number one, which is a lot of people work hard for the title, they work hard for the business card, they work hard for and it's funny because I'm just looking at my business card here, so I'm like, geez, I hope I didn't do this. But my business card never has a title on it.
Yeah.
I never have a title. I have always had my own business cards, and I've always had the same phone numbers since I started my career in 1996, no matter where I worked. And I'm not saying it's for everybody, but I've never been a title hound. And there's a book called the leader who had no title, I think it is, by Robin Schwarmer, and it talks about an effective leader doesn't need a title.
Right.
Your people are whatever you are, whatever you do and however you display yourself is who you are, right? And that's kind of that's a hard thing for people, because you work so hard to get to a certain point in your career where you're like, I'm the boss, I'm the
Right.
director, right? I'm the director. And you're like, okay, so I got here. Now what? Like, I want my business card to say, gold font, I'm the boss. Right. And it just doesn't work that way. And so, it takes work.
It
It takes
does.
work for you to get to that point where you go, I'm a human, I'm a leader, I care about my people, I want them to know a bit about me, and then what's enough and not too much, right?
Yeah. I think so. Some people I think are afraid of getting to that enough point because you are kind of friends, work
Yep.
friends or whatever, that when you have to have a crucial like a crucial conversation on the
Mhm.
business side of that relationship,
Yep.
that will be worse because you know this person better. And I've found that it's actually the opposite of that, because you've invested, you've built trust, you have a
Mhm.
relationship that is probably still centered around work, but you know each other better.
Yep.
When you have to have those crucial conversations, you know more about that person, so you can speak more directly to their personality and that kind of thing.
Yep.
But the conversations just tend to go way easier.
Yeah.
Even though you think it would be the reverse. Like, hey, I think this person's a friend and now I'm having to talk about their performance. But I've found that it's actually much easier when you have that relationship with people, and they trust you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're digging into a couple of different things, right? So it's part of authenticity and vulnerability is difficult conversations,
Yeah, it is.
right? And so the more comfortable you are with someone, and I put a post up, and unfortunately somebody reported it. I don't know why, but it got pulled. But I put a post up last week that I was talking about the two things that impact a difficult conversation is waiting too long to have it, and never having it with the party that you need to have it with, and having it with everybody else.
Yep.
And so that sharing and that comfort level allows you to have a difficult conversation a lot sooner. And also if you know what's going on. So for me, if I know what's going on with you, I'm not going to put the screws to you to find out why you haven't given me a purchase order yet, right? If I
Right.
know you've got stuff happening, then that makes it a whole lot easier, opposed to me thinking this guy's just ghosted me. This guy's I've had one. I've had someone that I've known for almost 20 years that I saw in November, was all about moving forward, wanting to come on board with us, do all these things, and then just and this is what society in the sales world calls ghosting. Oh, they're ghosting you. They're not ghosting you. They've got personal issues. They got professional issues. Sense of urgency in today's society is non-existent. I was amazed at that chair. I'm going to go down when I'm done with this. I'm going to go talk to the general manager of the hotel because the engineer came in. I don't think we talked about it on the podcast live yet here, but getting ready for this podcast and my chair broke. Looks like I got to go down to the treadmill and do some walking or something, but my chair broke. And they were up here in like 2 minutes, but my immediate knee jerk was like, I'm going to be doing this podcast without a chair.
Right.
So there's just a lot of different things, but so that the whole thing comes back to is, if you're comfortable with people, you can have a difficult conversation before it needs to be a difficult conversation.
Absolutely.
And that's huge, because that avoids so much conflict.
Yeah.
Don't need to have it.
Yeah. And, I think about that in terms like of, evaluations. We all have annual evaluations that pretty much everybody has to do. And like I've told my supervisors, you will never be surprised at an evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is a time where we get to sit together and talk about what's going well, what's our goals for next year, have some time just to breathe for a minute and plan. And nothing that you'll hear that day will be a surprise. I
So
promise.
let me ask you, is that because you have daily evaluations?
No, I think it's just because, and I haven't had any huge problems lately, but I think it's just addressing issues as they come up.
Yeah.
Instead of saving it instead of
Yeah.
saving it for the formal evaluation, you know,
Yeah.
course correct, you get everybody on the board and, you know, yeah, there may be a time in a formal evaluation you have to, you know, deal with things that, you know, performance issues after you've talked with them multiple times, that kind of thing. But I just believe that you just have those conversations when they occur. And then at evaluation time,
Yeah.
we already know what's on the table.
So I do quite a bit of consulting for businesses and organizations, and it's great because the things that I say that people think that what I say is stupid, it's great because I don't really want to work necessarily with those people anyway. So what I'm about to say is probably not going to gain me many interested parties for business. I think that the way that business evaluations and evaluations in general are stupid. I think it's nothing more than a report card that is too late to deliver. And so when I
Right.
ask you, do you do daily evaluations? You do. It just isn't with those words, which is, you know, anytime I work with a team, I say, look, it's a daily evaluation on both sides. And it can't just be the leader doing evaluations on somebody else. I mean, I remember the first time that I went to my boss and said, I want you to do a confidential survey evaluation on me I want all my team to do an evaluation of me and how my effectiveness as a leader. And he was like, what? And I said, well, if I don't know how I'm doing and I know how they're doing, that's not fair. And
Right.
so, but what I always have with my team, and it's very similar to what you're saying, is everything's a daily evaluation. I'm not going to wait until the end of the quarter, the end of the year to tell you that you didn't do something or that you could do something better. So your evaluation is going to be, what's the result, right?
Right.
So, hey, we came across this issue or challenge on Wednesday. We course corrected it. What was the result? And that's your yearly evaluation. These are the things that we encountered throughout the year, and here's the results of it. And if the results are good, then yeah, we don't have a surprise on evaluation. If the results are bad, you really don't care. And, you know, you just want a yearly evaluation. You're probably going to want to find someplace else to work. But I think that the whole, so first of all, it makes everything uncomfortable. It's not like a kid waiting for their Christmas presents to open. They're literally nervous and cause anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can go into a quarterly or yearly evaluation going, we're going to sit down and we're going to talk about all the good things that happen, because of the bad things that were brought up, you know, during the course of this period of time. So I think what you're doing is right. You know, what you're, in my opinion, people smarter than me will tell you, no, this evaluation process needs to be clearly defined and documented and everything else. Like I feel like this society has just built this protective bubble that we're trying to work ourselves into, right? It's like, hey, what's the purpose of an evaluation? Evaluation should be a purpose to bring somebody and make them better.
Right.
Instead, it's a protective action to prevent, you know, a lawsuit or, you know, some wrongful firing or whatever. We're dotting all these I's and crossing all these T's. I think it's just kind of crazy. I think we need to get people to start to realize that they need to want to do better, right? They want to be better, and we want to help them be better. And so
Yeah.
it just needs to be done a little bit differently. But again, I'm not an HR and I don't know much, but I know that as a whole, people want to be better at what they do, just be better in life as in general. And sometimes they just don't know. And it's up to the leader to figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, man, we could probably talk about this all day, but we've been almost an hour here.
11-11, lucky 11-11. I got to go play my lottery ticket. I'm going to go win the Powerball.
Well, I think it's been a great conversation. And I guess I just encourage everybody to just spend some time thinking about this discussion and like maybe what you need to do in your life, like to, you know, support your employees, support your friends, all of that kind of thing. Because the amount of good that comes out of showing vulnerability far exceeds your nervousness about it.
Yeah.
You know, at least in my experience, it's always been a positive experience for me. So
yeah. And for the younger people that feel this way, and I felt this way for a long time. And I think it's a Dr. Seuss book. It's like, what is it? Those that matter. I can't remember the saying, but it's, you know, it's something along the lines of the people that matter in your life aren't going to judge you.
Right.
right? And know that. And the people that do judge you, and you're going to have haters, and it's like you're going to have people that are going to judge you no matter what. Those aren't really people that you should care about anyway. I mean, there's people that talk junk about me all the time, and it's kind of funny because I just say, if I don't have haters, I'm not doing things right.
Right.
But to realize that the people in your life that matter most will see you as who you are, and realize that just like anyone in this world, everyone in this world is going to have difficulty and challenges. I just had breakfast with someone that was sharing with me a whole bunch of personal stories I knew nothing about.
Right.
Like they were all well put together, had it all dialed in, and boom, it's like a smorgasbord of surprises, right? And so the sooner people realize that everyone has flaws, challenges, and difficulties in life, the quicker you are to get comfortable to share some of yours and get it out, right? The getting it out is bottling it stuff up is terrible. So,
Yep.
so this has been great. Like I said, I'm not typically the guest here, and an honor, and I am going on record a second time. I told Burke the first episode he released, a year ago, probably a little more than a year ago, right?
Yeah.
First episode he released, I went on his LinkedIn page. I hit his contact info. He had his cell phone number. I called and I left him a cell phone message, guy from Boston, that I listened to his episode, and I told him that I predicted, based on the fact that he's an in the trenches practitioner, a daily in the trenches practitioner, and he was doing this podcast for the right reasons, which was to learn himself and share his learnings and findings and best practices, and having people on, that I predicted he'd be the number one rated operations and facility management for K-12 schools in the world, in the galaxy. And so he has done a phenomenal job. You've done amazing with your guests, including, I'll give myself some credit for being here, but not as much as some of your other guests, because you've had some really phenomenal ones. But you are on the path to greatness of sharing some really needed content, not just about this, but everything in the profession. So
Well, that means a lot, Josh. Thanks very much.
Keep up all the awesome. You're a special guy, and I'm grateful that we have built and established what will be now a hopefully a very long life friendship that continues to grow. And we share good stories along with some tough stories from time to time.
That's exactly right. Well, I feel a group hug coming on, so let's transition. Okay, so I ask everybody the same 3 questions at the end. So this is kind of rapid fire. Might be hard for you, but it's quicker answers. Okay.
Yeah.
What would your mom say you do for a living?
Well, my mom works for me. So yeah, so my mom is my scheduling specialist for Be Awesome. She retired as being a school teacher for 20 years. I gave her 59 days in retirement and told her she needed to get back to work. So my mom would tell you that I am first of all, she'll tell you that I'm a salesperson at heart, which I am. But she will tell you that I provide motivational speaking for schools and organizations around the country. And I'm also the vice president of business development for a software company. Those are the 2 things that she hears the most about. She lives next door to me. So she follows me on social media and everything else. So she's got a pretty good grasp on what I do. And her school was one of my clients for 15 years. So she saw me pretty often. Yeah.
That's pretty special that you guys work together.
Yeah.
So when do you get your best work done? What time of day?
When do I get my best work done? Any time of day. I don't sleep much. So, but typically I get my best work done in my first hour. I get my best work done in my either first hour or 2 or my last hour or 2. So I'm typically, I'm an early riser today. I was up at 4:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, and I had my first call at 6 a.m. MST. So I had an hour and a half where I was able to dig in and get into emails. Nobody was calling, nobody called, nobody did anything. Then my last couple of hours, especially when I'm home, everybody goes to bed and I stay up late and I just hammer away at busy work. But yeah. Typically that's a great question, because what's your best work? That really could be the question, because I could tell you my best work is going to be the next 8 hours when I'm around 300 people at an event. Right. but the best work for accomplishing goals a lot of times is that monotonous administrative stuff. So
Yeah.
administrative, first and end of the day, productive business opportunity. I'm all day. I'm all in. So wired for sound.
Okay. Last question. Are you like a digital note taker or do you like pen and paper?
I've got every digital notebook, and I have the Remarkable, I have the iPad, I have every technology, digital technology, and swear that it's going to work. My co-author of my book, Mark Resnick, he swears by the Remarkable. I can't grasp it. I have to write it on paper, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
But I'm a paper guy.
Yeah. I
sell technology.
Yeah. I pretty much moved to digital at this point, but
yeah, I think so you're triggering like there's this thing called digital dementia. It's a real thing where you just get so inundated with seeing things, but you've triggered. I think you did a post on that too, where you were asking, I think you were sharing the tools that you use. And there was one that I was going to ask you about that you use on I think it's on your iPad, right?
Yeah. So the two tools I use are on my MacBook. They go all over. So they're my MacBook, my iPad, and my phone.
Yep.
And so what are
they called?
Obsidian is a note-taking app. They can be very complex or very simple. Yeah. Depends how you want to use it. And then I use Todoist is my to-do list organizer.
Okay. That was the one. I got to look into that.
And I keep it simple.
I'm open. Yeah. I'm open to everything, but just for whatever reason, just that hard notebook is the way that I go. So
yeah. Well, Josh, man, I really appreciate you. This was a great conversation, and I'm super excited to get it released to the world. You guys out there and ladies, if you're liking what we're doing, give us a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. That really helps. And I like seeing it, I guess, call it a little dopamine hit or whatever, but it also just helps spread the word. So just appreciate it if you guys reshare this on your feeds and with your groups. Really, really appreciate that kind of support. So Josh, thanks again for being here.
Yeah, this has been an honor. And do those 5-star rating reviews. I was the first. I'll take credit. First 5-star rating and review, and it's a dopamine hit when you do it, because you're doing something good for somebody that deserves it, and you deserve it, my friend. So, like 5-star rating and review, way to this guy and get him up in the ranks, get him to number one, get him blasted by everybody else. So, being awesome, my friend. Thank you for the honor.
Thanks, Josh.